BookTube, welcome back to my channel. It is Friday, October 25th. We're here for a quick Friday Reads check-in. Quick because I vlogged most of this week and I'm going to be vlogging this coming weekend because it is Baby Watch Week, Baby Watch Weekend coming up. So I'm going to be making videos and I've already shared with you some of the books that I have read. So today I'm just going to talk briefly about the books that I have read since my last Friday Reads check-in and what I have on the horizons for the rest of this month. The first book that I finished in this week was Silas Marner by George Eliot, and I chose this one because of Victober. And reading this book by George Eliot was really eye-opening for me, not just about the book, not just about the time period, but also about my own reading preferences. I chose Silas Marner to respond to the challenge of reading a book by a new-to-me female author. And I liked it a lot more than I expected. I've always thought that I don't necessarily like to read classics, that I'll read them just because they're a part of the canon. And I know that I should in order to be well read, in order to have some understanding of how literature has evolved, that you need to read the classics. But reading Silas Marner was really enjoyable. The main character in this novel is a young man. Well, he's not a young man anymore. He's a man who, when he was a young man, he was framed for a crime and betrayed by his friend who, at the time of the investigation, took advantage of the situation, took his girlfriend. And so Silas Marner loses his friend, he loses his girl, and he loses his hometown because in refusing to confess to something that he didn't do, he's excommunicated. And so because of all this betrayal, he moves to another town and lives a very hermetic life. He's a weaver, and because he's not going out and socializing, he's able to amass a good fortune that he revels in. And one day it's taken from him. He loses all his gold, and not long afterwards he is gifted with a golden-haired child, and somehow in his mind he uses this opportunity to befriend and parent this golden-haired child as a substitute for what he has lost. I hope I haven't told you too much about the book. Over the course of the novel, the author presents a lot of transformations. Like, we see the transformation in experiences that Silas Marner has from one hometown to another, from one experience of wealth to another. And not just through him, but all the supplementary characters that the author introduces. We see how their positions change as their experience changes, and as they lose one thing and gain something else, how their idea of their possessions changes. I really enjoy the moral view of this story, but I also really like the writing style in that the author built these frameworks and then introduced these characters as though she was building a place for these characters to inhabit. And I thought it was just such a well-written novel. There were some holes, there were some faults that I could find. Of course, there's always something you can pick out of a novel and say, well, I didn't like how this thing was executed. But overall, I really enjoyed Silas Marner. I'm looking forward to reading more from George Eliot at this point. The second book that I finished this week was Rites of Passage by Joy and Hensley. And I chose this book because one of the many reading challenges that I'm doing this year is to read two books from different genres that have the same title. And Rites of Passage is the title that I have chosen. And William Golding has a novel with that title. That's literary fiction. I read that one last month, which was epistolary fiction written as a journal entry from a young man who's traveling from England to Australia during the colonial period, and he's recording his adventures on the high seas as he observes the differences in culture and the differences in experiences that he witnesses from the people aboard the ship. This Rites of Passage is kind of YA. The main character is a 16-year-old girl. She's growing up in a military family. Her father is military. Her two older brothers are or were in the military. Her older brother committed suicide sometime outside of the novel, and before he died, he had dared her to enroll in the military academy. And so she's never been one to back down from a dare, so she enrolls in this military academy as one of the first class that has admitted girls. And because the men who inhabit this space, both the men who are administrators but also the young men who are a part of the academy as students, they all resent her presence as well as the other female enrollees. And so the book is about the hazing, the prejudice and the discrimination that she faces, well, that all these girls face when they try to just be part of this military academy. There's a lot about the book that is difficult to read just because of the experiences that are being recorded, and some of it seems to be autobiographical because the author does indicate in her author's note that she went through some of the same experience when she was a teenager trying to enroll in the military. I liked the book. I didn't love it. There were places where I felt like the experiences were a little convenient. Some of the characters who should have been present to support the main character, they disappeared at random, and their disappearances were not always explained sufficiently. So it felt like they were living inside of a novel and not like true authentic experiences. The main character as well, we know that she grows up in a military family as the only daughter, surrounded by two tough boys. She must have been a tough kid as well, but some of her actions felt a little robotic, and when she moved away from feeling like a novel character, she did some things that seemed a little out of character for some of the values that she said she had. Like, for a big part of the novel, she is very insistent that she's not going to break the rules as it regards to having personal relationships with any of the men there. And I say men, I'm referring to the young men. And then somewhere in the middle of the book, even though she spent the first half of the book being very insistent that she's going to obey the rules and actually being teased for obeying the rules, then she just suddenly throws all caution to the wind and starts flouting the same rules that she's been a strong proponent of. So there were parts of the book that felt like it was just fiction and not enough of an experience to feel like you were really inhabiting that world. So I like the story because of what the author gave us in terms of experiencing what it must mean for a young girl to break those kinds of barriers, to enter a world that is so hostile towards her and still be able to survive and even thrive in it. But overall, didn't love that book, but was glad that I was able to mark it off as a completed challenge prompt. And then the last book that I finished so far this week was Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. And this was a Man Booker Prize winning novel from 1999 set in South Africa. And it's about an older middle-aged college professor who loses his job because of a sexual scandal that involves one of his students. And in moving away from his environment, he goes to stay with his adult daughter, who's living on a farming compound surrounded by African natives who, at the time of apartheid being done away with, they are now exerting their claim on the land and trying to take back everything that has been stolen from them over many generations. And this man's daughter, Lucy, she becomes a victim just of being a representative of her European culture. And although she is victimized and horribly victimized, she seems to step into her role as sacrificial lamb. And the author is really skilled in contrasting how disgracefully the main character, David Lurie, behaves in his own relationship with women, and how he behaves when he sees his daughter being victimized by men. Both of these women have lost something vital, something that they can never regain. And it's very interesting to see how the author presents this very unlikable character also being transformed in his own perspective as he starts to see the world a little bit different just because things are now happening to his daughter who he is helpless to protect. I'm going to do a full review of this book for my Man Booker series, but it's a $19.99 winner, so I won't get to that video being on the channel just yet, but I've already filmed my reviews, so you'll hear more about my thoughts when that comes up. So those are the 3 books that I finished this week. I'm also in the process of reading several other books that I probably should have finished today, but at the time of filming, I'm not done. So we're going to say that I'm in the process of reading them. One of those is Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Water Dancer. I'm just about halfway in this book. I started reading it yesterday and I thought that I was going to be able to complete it, but sometimes those things don't happen as you think. I'm not sure how much this book adds to the conversation about slavery, but it's interesting. What he's proposing in this book is not really new. It is the idea that these people who are enslaved, a lot of them have gifts that allow them to rise above the experiences that they're having as slaves. In this book, he calls people who are enslaved, he calls them tasked. And the white enforcers are called quality or low. Quality being the plantation owners, the low being the poor whites, I suppose, the ones who are the media group. I don't want to give too much of the story away because I didn't know what the book was going to be about necessarily before I started reading it, because like these synopses on the inside, I don't read them in general. So I'm not going to say too much more about the book. When I'm finished, I'm going to make a review video, a standalone review video, just because this is a brand new release and it's hyped. And I want to be able to review it, so if you want to come and just watch that video, you hear my more complete thoughts about the book, that you'll be able to do so. But in general, I don't watch review videos until I have read the book, or if it's a book that I know I'm not going to be reading anytime soon. So I'm going to do a review of this one when I'm finished, so you can watch that video if you so choose. One of the other books that I am reading this week that I thought I'd be finished by now is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And I'm really enjoying that book. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I expected, because Charles Dickens, my experience with him has not always been the best. But I've come to the realization that maybe my way of reading Charles Dickens is not the preferred way. Charles Dickens novels, I don't know if they were all like that, but some of them were written as serials, and they're meant to be read over a longer period of time. They're not meant to be read in one sitting or two. You need to give yourself time to really just let the characters enamor you. And I'm doing that with Great Expectations. I'm reading 100 and something pages each day so that I won't get too far too fast. Great Expectations is about a young boy named Pip. Well, he's nicknamed Pip. That's not his name. But he has great expectations for his life. He has ambition way past his circumstances as an orphan who's being taken care of by his older sister, who resents him, resents the fact that she has to care for him. He still has very high ambitions and a strong desire to move ahead in the world. And I like the way that he seems to, even though he's not quite an autodidact, he is one of those people who seems to reach out for opportunities. And a person who has that desire, I think the universe contrives to help that desire to be fulfilled. And I really like the way Dickens so far is presenting this transformation that happens in Pip's life, where his desires become fulfilled almost without him doing anything, except that when you reflect on what he has put out into the world, what he has espoused, not just as his values spoken, but values lived, and to see him find a benefactor without even looking, someone who is willing to help him fulfill those great expectations that he has. It's really a heartwarming story thus far. I'm not sure how it's going to end up, so I'm not saying too much about that until I'm at the end. So I'm reading that. I'm also still reading Old Devils by Kingsley Amis. I'm still reading The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I'm going to be reading that until November. But today, being October 25th, is also the start of the second installment of the Gone with the Book readathon. So for the next few days, I'm going to try to pick up some of the books that I had on my TBR for that Gone with the Book challenge, which is to read books that were published between 1900 and 1950. And I'll link my TBR video down below. If you're new to the channel, there are a few of you. Thank you, welcome. And if you want to see the books that I have set aside to participate in that 3-month-long reading adventure. So I'm hoping to get to at least a couple of those within the next 7-day period, and I'll tell you about them in my next Friday Reads video, or you will see them in the vlog as we move forward. So that's my little Friday Reads check-in. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more. Hopefully more videos coming soon as we move forward into Baby Watch weekend and everything that entails. So you'll be hearing more from me or seeing more from me. If you're not following me on Instagram, you should click the link down below. If you're on Instagram, I know everybody isn't, but if you're on Instagram and you're not following me there, it would be a treat to meet up with you on another platform. I share pictures, and that's probably going to be the first place where I will make the announcement when baby comes. So let's talk in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about. Let me know if any of the books that I talked about are books that you're interested in. Let's talk in the comments. I think I said that before, but until next time, happy reading. Bye.